Welcome to episode 100 of The Route, presented by White Whale Marketing. The Route is a glorified sports business coffee chat that has a new guest every episode as they share their experiences and route in sports. As always, and for the 100th time, I'm Christopher Nascimento, and let's get started. So, as always, we've got a few things to cover. So, if you can see here, you're watching on video, top hand corner, it says at The Route Sports. So that is the social handle for all of our social media accounts, whether that's LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, everything, right? So any good channel that's on social media, we're there. So check it out. And I'd say in particular, check out LinkedIn. So if you're listening to this podcast, you maybe have an interest in sports business, growing your network, maybe hearing how other people have, gone through their career. So it's a great way to maybe start connecting, continue connecting, or just, see a good post in a magazine cover that we post every episode. So check that out. Secondly, before we get into today's episode, is to just take the time to subscribe, like the podcast. It's been 100 episodes now, which is kind of crazy to think of, and I'll get into that shortly. But just allows us to grow a little easier. So whether it's on Spotify, Apple, Google, etc. And then for YouTube, we're underneath the White Whale Marketing YouTube channel, and we have our own The Route playlist. So check it out. You have it on video and audio. And finally, before we get into today's episode, just one quick message from BetStamp. Let me just get this up here. So, if you've been listening to the podcast now, I would say over the last 10, we've been working with BetStamp, which is super exciting and something I'll get into further later. But if you're someone who likes to place a couple bucks on your favorite team, and considering we're talking about sports business, I'm assuming you are. So don't be a fool like me, where sometimes, I'll be betting on the Senators and, they'll be down because they haven't been great this year. And I'll place a live bet. Well, then right off the top, I'm down, right? Whether it's my friend who's with me watching the game and they placed a bet on a different sportsbook and they got better odds, or maybe it's TSN and their sponsor is providing better odds, right? So you don't want to be down before you even get going there. So the solution is to use BetStamp for the best available odds among sports books. The only way you're going to get an edge at online sports betting is by having an account with multiple sports books. So download the BetStamp app or go to betstamp.app/Ontario and use the code WHALE so you can get access to their affiliates and their prices. BetStamp allows you to verify the existence of a proposed bet with their corresponding odds, and this provides you to buy and sell picks with full transparency, which is always good considering the nature of the beast we're talking about. And users selling sports picks on BetStamp do not sacrifice any royalty or cut to the app. It's completely free, and that's always great. So again, if you want an edge in online sports betting, use BetStamp by downloading their app or visiting betstamp.app/Ontario and using the code WHALE to get access to all of their affiliates and their pricing. So with that now covered, we can get into today's episode. And if you haven't been listening to the podcast long enough, something I've been doing with The Route is every 20 episodes or so, I will just take the time and have an episode for myself, right? And that's kind of weird to say. Talking about yourself isn't always the easiest thing, but I just kind of view this podcast almost as a keepsake for my career, right? Where, episode 0, you can, check it out. So 0, 20, 40, 60, and 80 are all about me and the different events that kind of occurred within those 20 episodes. So, 0, starting the podcast, just kind of sharing, who I was, recent graduate at the time, and going from there. Episode 20, I think, was my convocation day for UAuto, which is online due to COVID, / my first day at Athletico Auto, which was exciting. Episode 40, I think I launched the business. Episode 60, something else happened that I don't remember. I think episode 80, which is the last one, and obviously there's a big gap because there's a pause with the podcast, but I'll get into that later. But episode 80 was my 24th birthday, if that's not mistaken. That was about 11 months ago. So there's no major life event or major career event taking place now, but I am approaching 25, and the way I view this podcast, as I said, is a keepsake. So hopefully one day when maybe I'm 50 or something like that, I can refer back to this podcast or every 20 episodes or so to kind of hear what I was up to at that period of time. So if you'd like, just follow along. And I think it's something that could be interesting as, we're trying to build White Whale Marketing into something special. So I have my notepad as always. Today I won't be taking notes, but I'll just kind of be reading off some points that I had so I can refer to the last 11 months and what I've been doing. But yeah, so I think where we left off with episode 80 was late September 2021 or early October 2021. And it was an interesting period as a reset was needed for my business where, you know, things weren't necessarily working, right? And that was kind of a hard thing for me to admit for a long time where, you know, we were obviously working with athletes and, you know, trying to increase our consultation side of the business, but then we just weren't executing and getting in front of the right people. So that was a major problem, right? So I think another thing too was, you know, spreading myself too thin in regards to what white whale marketing was doing within the first year of operation, where, you know, there's things like streams, podcasts, newsletters, which is still going on. The Sport Markets here, check it out. There's a link in the description for the podcast and the video, gaming and different things like that, right? Where I think and then there's merchandise, NFTs, etc. We're just trying to kind of prove ourselves where I wanted to be able to say, hey, if an athlete comes to us and say, I want to do X, we're like, hey, cool, we've done X. Here's an example. Let's go from there. Or maybe it's a brand, or maybe it's a company or organization we're consulting with. So I just want to have those bases covered there to make sure, like, hey, like we've been able to do it. And obviously having an asset like this, the podcast or the streaming tournament, we're able to get, you know, sponsors ourselves and then kind of also develop that through athletes. But it was definitely something that needed to kind of take a step back from, because it's a business, right? And if money isn't coming in as much as it's going out, there's a problem. So a lot of what I did from there was kind of just take a reset and kind of cut everything, right? Where I wanted to just focus on white whale marketing solely and the actual business of it, where the additional podcasts, the gaming, the merchandise, what else? The streaming, all that stuff. And not to say that it won't return one day, but I was like, hey, let's cut it and I just want to focus and assess, you know, where things are going and what needs to be done, right? So that's why the podcast, even this one, as great of a tool is and something that I think is awesome. At the time, I'm like, hey, I don't want to do anything but just focus on the business. And I'll get back to the podcast later and why I started it up again. So, right. So last fall, as I was saying, didn't think things were working out where I wanted things to be. And just wanted to reassess how things were being done, especially with like the process we're using in regards to sales and partnerships. So, you know, the who, the how, the what, the where, it wasn't working, right? Because, you know, we're having these great ideas of what we wanted to do and what we could do with an athlete, but then we weren't getting in front of the right people, and that was a major problem. So obviously I took the time, I think it was a month or two, and kind of just did some research, talked to a lot of people, and then kind of looked at the notes that I had with all the different meetings we were having over the first few months. And from there kind of revamped the sales process or partnership process that I had. And I said, hey, this is how things are going to go, and this is how we can be as aligned to dealing with a professional sports team, right? So when we reach out to a brand, the way we're doing it, or even the assets we're providing them within our meetings and the stages of it, is something similar that they would see from, you know, a professional sports organization within, you know, Canada, right? So that was a big thing. But at the same time with that, it was kind of hard, right, to assess if that was the right things, right? Because there's, you know, I was kind of getting in my head where, to be honest, I was insecure to the point where I didn't want to reach out to my network. And that's kind of my greatest asset, right? With the people that I know and the experiences they have, and kind of, you know, using their knowledge to my advantage. But then I got to a point where I almost wanted to fix everything myself, which was probably not the best way to go about it. But once I kind of swallowed that pride, I think that helped a lot, right? Because even though that process that I'm, you know, now still using, that is very much similar to the one I first came up with, I didn't necessarily have the confidence to kind of go through with it, right? Because I had 2 processes before that didn't work as well, and only once I started, sharing that process and maybe asking people's insights and kind of, having them poke holes in it, or maybe saying, hey, maybe just refine it that way. That was a huge aspect for me. And yeah, it was just something where, you can't do it on your own, right? And I think one of the biggest things I needed to learn was, asking, for help sometimes, or even just getting a mentor. And that's something that I think was huge for me. And in particular, I signed up for this program where they're kind of setting you up with people that have been in the industry for a while, and especially with someone who is in partnerships, marketing, something like that. And that's where I met, the mentor that I speak to the most, Dave Ladars, which is, the director of partnerships at Golf Canada. And he was, huge in some of the things I've been able to do, where, that process I came up with last fall, we didn't do that many, he didn't tell me to completely scrap it. It was horrible things, but he's like, hey, that's fairly similar to what we're doing. And he's like, these are the ways you can kind of refine it. Right. And that kind of gave me more confidence that I was asking other people, and they were kind of saying the same thing. I'm like, no, that's kind of exactly what we're doing. And then having these people who's been in the industry for such a long time, who brokered these large deals, saying, hey, you're on the right track. That was a huge bump of, hey, we're doing the right thing with white whale marketing, and it's not for nothing, right? So that was kind of huge, where just using the network, and that kind of gets back to the podcast, but I'll get into that later. But yeah, I think anyone who's listening to this podcast, or who is starting a business, or even starting a career, or who is in the middle of their career, something that I would say is definitely find a mentor, or someone who, I don't know, whether it's in this podcast, maybe just kind of listening to every week and different people that are on it and taking things that they're saying and applying to yourself is definitely huge. And some of even the biggest things now, whether it's just an idea I have, or not necessarily ideas, but things I think are a little bit bigger, and I want someone who's maybe seen it, or maybe know people who have seen it, and just sending a couple of texts, or hey, let's catch up quickly for a 10-minute call, or going for coffee, a bagel, beer, etc. It's had a big thing, and I think that's the biggest change, I would say, from year 1 to year 2, which is kind of approaching, is that just taking the time to open up and being like, hey, this is a problem we're having, what would you suggest, and kind of taking that stuff rather than just trying to figure it all out on your own. So then that was kind of exciting. Then we had a new burst of confidence regarding white whale marketing going into 2022. And kind of hit guns blazing, right, where had this new sales process, kind of reached out and gone in front of a lot of brands, and a lot of exciting ones too. And they're all answering. We're having a lot of meetings from what I remember now, and kind of looking back to some of my notes. And they're going well, right, where a lot of them were advancing, having more than the introductory call, but then definitely hit a wall, is what I'll say, right, where it definitely kind of solved the problem in regards to getting from the right people, and the who, the what, the where, and the how. But at the end of the day, the brands we're working with or talking with for partnerships, it's what they kind of says goes, right? They're almost like what they want. They're the ones with the money. So I had to listen to what they were saying, where we were doing the right things. They were interested in what we were offering, but they wanted something different, right? And then that was definitely something that was kind of tough to, let's say, swallow, where you're like, okay, well, don't have that at the moment, and maybe I got to go back to the drawing board and fix that, where we have an asset, let's say, of interest, right, where they can use it to leverage it in their campaigns and other events like that. So definitely something where, again, kind of maybe 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but still moving forward. And definitely something where I had to just assess and be like, okay, athletes are the main reason I started white whale marketing, right, to kind of help them, and help them build their brands, market themselves, and develop partnerships. But there's a balance to it, right, where whether it's even, let's say, a bigger agency that's just fully athletes it's hard to be profitable with athletes, right? Because it takes a lot of time. You're building them up. They obviously have a different profession they're focused on, and unless it's like a home run or a perfect athlete for a specific brand, there's definitely gonna be a lot of like work and time going into it. So that was definitely something of interest where I had to maybe take a step back in that and kind of assess, hey, like what are they looking for and how can we provide that? And fortunately, after those kind of conversations and that realization, started looking into hockey a bit more, right? Where I think that's something I said in episode 80, where even to this day, really haven't gone after that many athletes, where a lot of them were just, at the time, quick little messages, and there hasn't been the same amount of back and forth between what we've done with brands or even reaching out to brands than what we have with athletes. And that's something where I'll talk about at the end, which is kind of wrapping up of where we're at right now or what I'm at right now, and that's kind of focusing on athletes, having those athletes that are of interest to those brands. But at that time, right, so early 2022, there's an agent we're kind of working with and trying to help out with one of their clients that's local to Ottawa, and then they kind of said, hey, like, would you be interested in this athlete, right? They're a female goalie. They're going to do something special, and that was Eve Gascon, which was the first female to play in the CHL in 22 plus years, and future Team Canada goalie, all that good stuff. And that was incredibly exciting because that's exactly what brands were looking for. That's exactly what they were saying in the conversations we were having. And within that first week of actually like signing on the dotted line, I was like, hey, like we'll be working together. I think I quickly, before going to her game when she was playing at Gatineau, I sent a couple emails to 10 big brands, Nike, Gatorade, Bose, different things like that. And I think we got 100% response rate, definitely interest involved. And they're like, hey, like let's circle back and see where it goes or different things like that. But that's kind of seeing how that initial problem from, let's say, when episode 80 released, where, hey, we weren't getting from the right people or getting to the right people, to then, early 2020, early 2022, my bad, where, there was interest and we were having the right assets and kind of building off the problems that we were facing. But then as things go and with the business, I guess, what comes up kind of must come down. I think, if I'm not mistaken, a lockdown or something like that happened. I forget if it was in Canada or something, definitely somewhere in the world. We're working on some different deals for consultations that's definitely going to allow the business to kind of go in a bigger lane, is what I'll say. Kind of maybe reinvest it, maybe go put some money to the athlete side of things, content, etc. And a few of them just kind of fell through right at the end, right? Contracts ready to go, a bunch of meetings, kind of assessing what the plan was to go forward for these deals. And the two bigger ones that kind of seemed pretty much guaranteed kind of fell through. And that's definitely a gut punch, right? Where, sure, I think at that time we were realizing maybe there's a thing we need to figure out with the athletes, because it's not what the brands necessarily wanted or the bigger brands wanted. But then at the same time, got like that other gut punch from a couple deals that we're working on. And it's like, okay, like that's a lot to take in, right? Where I think at the time, it would have been about a year and a half. I was doing white whale marketing, kind of starting it on my own, in my apartment here. And, it was self-funded. It's all through me kind of just living off my savings and investments and kind of different assets that have been coming up and down. But it often came to the point was like, okay, like, is this something that's going to move forward, right? Where I started having conversations with people in my network that I value their opinions. Like, hey, like, it's tough, right? Kind of taking those body shots. And definitely when you finally feel like, hey, like we're going to hit that next level, and then to have it taken away was interesting is what I'll say. And then, yeah, from there, I definitely had to reassess things on my own, where I had to ask, if it was, let's say, worth it, right? Where I definitely spent a lot of my time, money, effort, etc., trying to grow white whale marketing. and then to kind of have it knocked down, and then maybe different things like, let's say seeing things on social media or even LinkedIn sometimes wasn't the healthiest thing to be like, hey, like, why can't that be me? Or when I first started the business, I thought it'd be way easier than it's been. And definitely something that was like, tough to realize, where a year and a half in wasn't where I wanted to be. And, as soon as it seems like things are about to turn the corner, they come down, right, to an extent. And that's when I was kind of having conversations with people where, am I just kind of throwing it all away, in the sense of what I've saved, what I've been like working towards, or even like the time and maybe some opportunities that I had. And I had to kind of reassess that, right, where it was tough for sure. But as always, life was pretty funny in how it works. And I kind of started to wonder, hey, like, maybe there's something else out there where I could do white whale marketing part-time. And obviously that the goal was always to kind of grow the business and make it into something special, but maybe it's time to maybe take a lot of the risk for myself out of it and get a position that would allow me to be flexible and kind of do it on my off time. And from there I started doing interviews, right, just for putting my name out there, seeing what's available. And I had one interview in particular that kind of stands out, where it was a partnerships manager job for a fairly large NSO. And, I remember for the interview, I was pretty excited. Seemed like a great opportunity. Lots of research, notes, even kind of leverage my network to kind of get an inside scoop on, what deals we're looking, or if they're working together, and felt very like prepared, right? I'm like, hey, like, this is something that I can be a huge asset for. And what kind of caught me off guard, where I was so set that the amount of value I was going to be able to provide, the whole interview was essentially around me, my personal experiences. And I think I can still remember they asked me a personal question, and it caught me so off guard, where I had, I think, it's in this notebook, 6-8 pages of notes, right, of like different things, some of their partners, and different ways I think we could improve and generate revenue. And then I remember it's kind of a softball question where they're like, tell me about yourself, or something like that. And I kind of stalled, right, where I was like, oh, like, what? Like, and I remember after answering, I was like, hey, sorry, like, that was a horrible answer. And even though I felt so prepared, I wasn't ready for like the easiest question. So obviously that didn't go through. And then I was kind of thinking of like, okay, like, damn, maybe I gotta look, like, start seeing these other interviews and seeing where they would go. But then I don't know, I think I just hit the point where I was looking different jobs, and this was all within, let's say, a week or two, just kind of see what's available. And I just remember like, nope, this isn't how it goes, right? Where I was like reading some job postings and different things that they were offering, and like what the role would be. I was like, I can't do this. But no, yeah, like, this isn't how it ends. I remember telling myself that. And yeah, I kind of decided that, yeah, there's no chance I'm gonna do the business part-time, or just like let it go, right? I want to see it through, and I think it's worth it. And I definitely think where it's definitely getting closer to what I first envisioned, let's say, from when I had the idea of it. But yeah, so then from there, I was kind of like, yeah, no, it's not time to kind of end it, or even give this an opportunity to kind of, take the foot off the gas a bit there. And yeah, let's say another shift went there, right, where I just kind of realized from that initial interview I was talking about, where I did all that research, and I was like, hey, like, I think there's an opportunity there where I think we can provide a lot of value to NSOs through consulting. And from there, kind of had a full court press and reached out to a bunch of NSOs, kind of, positioned how I view things, and how, the realization I had in regards to the opportunity that there was there. And definitely have had some great conversations on that front. And that's all I'll say to this point. But then, yeah, then kind of tried focusing on different assets, right, to generate revenue, where there was partnership consulting, athlete branding workshop for teams, kind of help out players. And I think that will happen one day. Right now, I'm not sure, but there's definitely interest in it. And that's why I kind of returned the podcast, right? Where I just had the realization that the podcast at the end of the day, what it's all about is just kind of connecting with great people, right? Whether it's people listening, whether it's people seeing the clips, whether it's just kind of the guests that I'm able to have. If no one listens, I've always said this, that's okay. Obviously, people do listen, but the insights and the connections I'm able to make because of it is worth it on its own. So that's why the podcast kind of started again, where a lot of the great people I know regarding this business has come from this, right? Whether it's just maybe leads or even the people they know or different things like that, has been a huge asset in regards to kind of growing, right? So going back to all the way to the beginning of episode 80, where it was about a year ago, I kind of swallowed my pride and was like, hey, like I am going to start, leveraging my network a bit better and like asking questions more, having more discussions than I was, rather than just kind of the superficial connections. And that was huge. And I think this podcast, and whether it's, people kind of connecting on the LinkedIn or Instagram, different things like that, I definitely recommend, trying it. So that was huge. And then obviously, last but not least, athlete partnerships. That's something that's still big, still going full court press about it. And, August has definitely been very fun and interesting. And obviously, this is something I've been doing for this new full court press, where I was like, nope, this isn't ending. Has been going on for a few months now or more, since early spring, where I was like, hey, like, no, like there's still something here, and there's a lot of value, and I think we're starting to really turn the corner, I'll say. Like, for instance, like last week alone, some of the brands I was meeting with was like Desjardins, CN, Rona, RW and Co. I feel like I'm missing some. And there's a beer company. Anyways, it was just, it's crazy how things have changed in a year, is what I'll say. And even the opportunity I had with the University of Ottawa Sport Business Club to have a keynote to talk about athlete branding. That's something that's on the YouTube channel you can check out. But yeah, definitely kind of a new life where, there is an opportunity here, and I'm excited to see where things go. And I think the next little bit is definitely going to be super interesting, where I think the first year, maybe the first year and a half, there was a lot of things to figure out, but then understanding where the opportunity is, the value that is able to provide, is now known clearly, and it's go time, right? So very excited for, the consulting side of things, and hopefully in a few weeks' time that can be announced regarding some deals, and then athlete branding workshops one day, the podcast, of course, and athlete partnerships. It's all things that, I love doing. I think it's super exciting, and very happy to see where things go. And definitely think by the time episode 120 comes around, there should be some exciting things on that front. But yeah, this whole point of episode 100 is to kind of provide a reminder to myself of, hey, what's going on, what I'm doing, and maybe if you're interested, you can follow along with that as well. But that's what the last 11 months has been. Definitely ups and downs. Recording a podcast like this, but yeah, definitely cool. Starting a business is definitely not the easiest thing in the world, but tons of opportunity. Definitely think there's exciting things around the corner, and stay tuned at White Whale Marketing. So that's White Whale mktg. Been doing a lot of reels and different things like that, so you can check it out there. And yeah, stay tuned for the next 20th episode edition of myself to kind of stay tuned with what's going on. But yeah, thank you for listening to the podcast. Can't believe it's been 100 episodes. I've seen pictures, right? I think episode 100 came out. I was in quarantine. I had my mustache, all that good stuff going, and I just thought it was a great way to kind of connect with people, and it still is. And to think, 2.5, 3 years maybe since I first got the idea for this podcast, it's still going. it's pretty exciting. I'm glad to have to be partnering with someone like Betsy, but hopefully we can get something going more from there and kind of continue to build up the podcast. But yeah, 120 episodes. That'll be when I have the next update. 100 episodes is amazing. I think I already have the next 15 episodes recorded and ready to go. So, yeah, should be exciting. Stay tuned. Got a bunch of great guests. Lots of hockey coming up. Some females in sports as well. Trying to get that angle a bit more because it's been harder to kind of find guests for that side. But yeah, really exciting. Got a bunch of cool guests coming up, and hopefully you enjoyed. And that's it for episode 100. Thank you again for following the podcast, listening to my route, if you will, and don't forget to subscribe, follow, and rate 5 stars on whatever platform you listen on. But that's it for episode 100. See you next time.